What's going on, my creative collective? Welcome to your Sagittarius Full Moon, Cancer. So, we're going to dive in here. The theme that came up for the readings as I was going through was Resplendent Surrender, just this rich leaning in and giving it up, right? So, not giving up, but giving it up, giving up tension, releasing attachment, letting go fully, right? So, Resplendent Surrender. So, we are in the middle of June. There's some definite energies active, but we'll see what the cards have to say about all of it, okay? So I would like to invite the angels, my guardian angels, my spirit guides, protectors, teachers, and their healing energy to this space. And I ask that it is a safe and brave space that allows for the fullest expression of our light, humanity, ascension, and healing. Okay, so this is the Journey of Love Dream, or Journey of Love Oracle. I'm going to pull from to get some initial energies here. You can see a little patch of sun. Oh, it's such a nice day out. I'm so excited. Excited and grateful for the day. All right, Spirit. What messages do you have for Cancer, please? My Cancerians. Let the feminine lead the way. Oh, I like that. Honoring some feminine energy here. Her grace. Did I mention feminine energy here? I feel like there's something about the way that surrender, the way that you're wearing surrender this month, Cancer, in terms of your energy, but also the way that it's showing up in your life and in your behaviors. All of it is just, the cloak. Yeah, it's almost like you're wearing it, right? I'm going to read this one to you. The cloak. That's beautiful. Okay. The cloak. Okay. Well, there you go. Around you, there's a cloak of your own creation. Perhaps it has served you for a time as an invisible form of protection, as a way to claim needed solitude, as a way to retreat inside to find out what you truly feel, what you truly need, to find yourself after being lost in an ocean of thought and emotion, not always your own. Yet the time is fast approaching when you will no longer require that cloak. You have attained an integration within, a knowledge of self that makes it possible for you to connect with the world, with others, in a way that does not leave you lost and struggling to find yourself. You have learned how to hold yourself. You have learned how to do this well enough that you can successfully hold yourself and hold another too. That's beautiful. You don't have to push the world away. You can invite it in and play. The message that this oracle brings to you is that you can safely release the forms of security that you once held. You do not have to abandon your boundaries with others. Rather, your boundaries are so functional that you can enter into relationships with more openness. You can enter into relationships with more openness, trusting that your boundary will naturally assert itself when necessary, giving you the connection to yourself that you need when you need it, without having to withdraw from relationship entirely. It's time to trust your own boundaries and practice letting them help you whilst actively engaging in deeper relationship. You'll have fun. That's beautiful. So I think that this is really about kind of surrendering to it. I'm based on this card. I'm just seeing this almost like fortress of boundaries around you, where it was like a lot of in service to protecting you, but did it really protect you? And maybe that's what we're surrendering. We'll see where the cards take us, though. We'll see where the cards take us. Spirit, what messages do you have for Cancer for this Sagittarius full moon reading? What are we expanding on? What energies are we stepping into? What kind of fresh vibes are in Cancer's energy? 5 of Cups. That's the surrender, right? This is like the emotional surrender. I almost get that this is like the letdown surrender. Like, it's not just releasing disappointments, but I think it's also about understanding that there's a cup that only you can fill, right? There's a cup that only you can fill. And maybe that's how the story of this sort of boundaried protection came into play, where there was a hesitation to not let other people in, but to let them see you, right? To let them see you. Because like humans are messy. Like as much as, everybody is like, yeah, this is amazing. And, I think about like even teachers that we all follow on here, like they all have their messes just as we all do, right? We all deal with it differently and in healthier ways than not, but there's still this imperfection. And I'm getting, and that's the beautiful part though, right? Like that's how people find you, and that's how the light gets in. So I'm feeling like there's there's sort of a realignment, and it's just sort of like pouring out stale water because your cup is filled with enough light for you, and that's how you share it with others. Like I'm getting this boundaried sense of self. It's very first house. Spirit, what messages do you have for my Cancerians for this Sagittarius full moon? Please and thank you. Seven of Swords. I think, so it's interesting because the Seven of Swords is showing up in this embracing energy. What I find interesting about that is it's almost like it's taking, like you may have gotten messages that boundaries were a form of like taking from others, but people who really have, it took me a very long time to learn that people who have an investment in taking from you and who are invested in an unequal imbalance will work to either dehumanize or to try to break down your boundaries by appealing to your sense of empathy and compassion. And they can sometimes make you feel bad for just saying what you need and taking what you need, which is exactly what relationships are about, right? Not taking what you need, but giving. What I'm saying here is that there's this balance, right? Like saying, this is what I need. This is what I need. And just the articulation of that was deemed by others a taking of some kind, when really that's not the case at all, because relationships are supposed to be about an equal give and take, right? It's not about take, or, and you shouldn't feel exhausted by them, right? You shouldn't feel exhausted. You should be happy. You should be happier more than you are sad or wondering or confused, right? A good book that I've recommended earlier on this channel is Talk to Me Like I'm Someone You Love. It's a fantastic book to communicate how you feel. And I worked a lot with that in and around 2013, 2014. Just healing family patterns and things like that. So I think I highly recommend that book, but it's that idea of like just articulating yourself and what you need is not taking. So I think embracing a stronger sense of self, and I think that might be something that is worth releasing during that full moon period, Cancer. Because I think too that when people do that, it throws you out of touch with yourself and your emotions. So it becomes very challenging just to exist in your own energy in a way that feels good to you. Like it's, how do you feel at ease with yourself when there's a shakeup constantly waiting? This wanted to come out. Six of Wands is what we're releasing. What people think, and maybe old ideas of success, like old ideas of success, right? Or what made something successful. Because if you haven't fully released family templating, you might be inclined to believe that relationship success happens in one or two or three ways, when there's, in actuality, there's far more. I'll put these two down. When in actuality, there's far more, right? And it's also just thinking outside of the box too, and just remembering that what you want isn't, it shouldn't be a burden, and no one is difficult to love. No one's difficult to love. We all have challenges that come with loving us. All of us do. But if you're with someone that makes you feel like you are hard to love fundamentally, Cancer, that's not your person. And, people might be like, but what? No. But like, there's a difference, right? Someone saying like, oh my gosh, this is infuriating. This is so, this habit annoys me. Different. If someone says you're so hard to like, no, that's not, there's a difference, right? So I'm just getting that energy from these two cards here for you, Cancer, specifically with this, like the cloak, like it's almost like the surrender is surrendering to, I'm thinking, okay, so I am not a big fashion person. I'm very, I have specific colors that I like to wear, specific styles, and I stick to those because it's just comfortable for me. And also as a trans person, my fashion's still evolving and whatnot. So that's a thing too. But there was this Blake Lively dress, and the only reason why I know about this is because Ryan Reynolds is hilarious, and it was coming up in my feed about the way that he looked at her, and I was like, oh. But then I saw her dress, and how it became like two different dresses, and I'm almost seeing like that here for you, like with this cloak. Like there's some way that you were wearing clothing or energy. We're wearing an energy, I think, and then it's just sort of like unfolding and transforming. And I mean, how lovely would it be to know that someone looks at you the way that Ryan Reynolds looked at her? Like, oh my gosh, that stuff makes me melt. But I feel like there's a way that the energy that you wore before, there's like a transformation of it, that is, I get like Met Gala worthy. I'm not sure, but like just that idea of it being worn exceptionally by you. So, yeah. So then I think this story of how the light gets in is like, I think this is the release, really. It's like surrendering conflict, surrendering competition, feeling like this is more you recognizing what's important to you, as opposed to these are all of the competing priorities, competing energies, competition, period. And I think you really do have to tune out this, because if you focus on competition, like so for example, I've been in relationships where people thrived on trying to make me jealous, and I don't get jealous overly easily, but it's like they needed that as validation for them. Like they needed to know that there was a way, and it was just constantly destabilizing. Now, 11:11 on the time. The reason why I'm bringing this up in that context is because when you are in energies that are destabilizing, it can feel like you're losing your sense of self because you're constantly responding to something. So when you articulate your needs, you're responding to the drama. You're responding to someone else's drama. So instead of actually just getting to ask for what you need and articulating it, it's like you feel like you're taking something because you're constantly having to respond. And that's super unhealthy. It's super unhealthy. It's a dynamic that I'd been in before, and I really had to release that a couple years ago, because it does get draining, right? It absolutely, it's like a sieve for your energy. But I feel like this can sort of manifest not only in relationships, but elsewhere as well, where you're competing. Like you set up these priorities that make the game really difficult for you to win, and not just like the game of life or the game like in terms of drama. It's just, it makes it really difficult for you to feel like you have some kind of control or command in your life. Not that you need total control, because there's a lot of joy in the unknown. But this is also just an energy of, it's almost like you can't really find your footing. You can't find your footing. And I think that the wheel is turning because you're stepping away from those energies. And this is you finding your footing on a wheel that's turning. And the wheel is turning it's almost like a chicken or egg thing. Like, is the wheel turning because you've surrendered and because you are surrendering to an even footing and stability? Or is the wheel turning because, is it like, which one is the wheel turning, because it's turning or because of what you did? Probably both, right? Like the dice here around this person's neck remind me that like nothing is really as left to chance as we might think, right? Like there's a way that we wear our luck in terms of our choices. And yeah. And I think that this is like stepping, like it's almost like emerging, like, I don't want to say rocketing away from, but kind of this kind of competitive energy that doesn't really do much to honor where you are and what your goals are and what you want to see happen and what you want to make happen too, right? The wheel is as much destiny and fate as it is within our control too, right? Yeah. There's a lot of, it's an interesting balance here too with the fire. Like there's a more pronounced fire towards this side, and I feel like there's something about your passion that's allowing the light to get in, or allowing light in. So passion, it can be ideas that you're excited for. It can be projects. It can be, curiosities that you have that you're like, I'm going to dive into that and see where that takes me. Right. And it can be a bunch of these different things as well. Look at that. The wheel was on the bottom of this deck too. Yeah. So I feel like that's like the wheel is very loud right now. So Jupiter is quite pronounced, but you also have to you have to understand that Jupiter is about expansion. So when we hear about destiny and fate, we can get excited, but there's another component too of it being not fearful, but new, in that there's something really refreshing that we're giving ourselves and we are allowing because of decisions that we've made along the way and commitments that we've made to ourselves. And I'm getting that this is a to yourself commitment here, Cancer. So Spirit, what messages do you have for my Cancerians for this full moon in Sag reading, please? And thank you. Please clarify this Five of Cups, Knight of Swords. I feel like once you let go, that's where this expansion takes place. The surrendering disappointment, surrendering that like it could have worked out any other way. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I've thought about this in terms of like, grad school and, the possibilities of doing doing a PhD. And it felt like I really had to let go of it because I liked the idea, but not for the reasons that would get you through potentially 10 years, at least the way that the programs have been going through the pandemic. And then, your best bet would be adjunct professor making $40,000 to $50,000 a year. You'd have no stability. There's no guarantee of a job necessarily. You might have to move, and not just move once, but like constantly to find some kind of tenure track position, and you're overqualified for just about every other position. So it was really like balancing these decisions here, right? And that's where it was like, I liken it to this because the Five of Cups is showing up in this sort of disappointment energy, but I don't think it's a disappointment. It might just be like you had to realign with something that was more important to you, or it could have been a relationship. But it was just like something lost its shine. And I almost get this image here of like new moon energy, because there's no moon in the sky. And I feel like this maybe was, I'm hearing Aries new moon. It could be something around then. I'm just thinking of Aries because of this sort of boundaried self and the lessons that the Aries new moon might have brought with it. But I think that this is about you, understanding the nuance, understanding the nuance of your own emotional fulfillment. And again, I go back to this Ace of Cups here. Like the Ace of Cups is quite loud because it didn't disappear. It was not disappeared. Because people might say like, what? That doesn't make, yes, it does. To disappear something, to disappear someone is a thing. And I think you tried to like disappear yourself. But that was almost like the contraction, and you realized that that doing that was antithetical to your success. And I think that's where the wheel kind of came in and shook things up a bit, I'm getting, but not in a bad way or an unsettling way. It just kind of got you on your horse and rode the heck out of there, right? Yeah, it kind of got you right on out, which is a good thing. Like that's the Knight of Swords in this instance, I think is quite good. And this can also be just a relationship to yourself and the standards that we hold for ourselves. Like, do we hold ourselves to a higher standard than others in a way that's fair to ourselves, right? Like that kind of relationship that we can get in with ourselves. But I think that it's almost like it felt like you needed, I'm seeing like maybe some closure, like there was information that you didn't really have, but you moved forward anyway, but there's still information that you're seeking. And maybe this is also about surrendering, that you don't have to know all the answers for the things that didn't work out, right? You just don't. Like, would I have loved to be Dr. Costello? Sure. That'd be great. That'd be awesome. It'd be the first in my family. But would it be something that I really wanted in the long run? No. And who needs the vanity stuff? Like, who needs the vanity stuff? It's just not, it's almost like it wouldn't make you a better person. Like, it wouldn't do anything like that. So it's almost like these expectations and standards, like I use the example of the PhD because it feels the most aligned to how this is coming across. But yeah. And this Two of Swords is coming not as an indecision here. I think this is about you feeling like you might need more information than what you have, but I feel like you know enough already. On the bottom of the deck here, the moon, I feel like you know enough already. Page of Swords. Yeah, you don't need to find out anything else. And sometimes that's the tough part, right? That's the surrender. Is surrendering to the need to the feeling that we need to know more in order to feel a sense of ease and peace. Like it's okay to let something go if it feels incomplete, right? Because most of life is like that. The song "Incomplete" by Alanis Morissette is playing in my head now. But yeah. I feel like there's this deep sense of, it's like there's not, I don't feel regret. And honestly, like I think regret is interesting because I don't really know that it 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 exists in a way, but then I think that regret is like this clever discursive trick that we use to avoid taking care of ourselves, right? Oh, I regret doing that. Well, yeah, but then what now, right? Like what's the what now? Like how are you moving forward from that? And that's the thing where it's like, well, it doesn't, I feel I'm conflicted on regrets, but so I don't pick it up on in this energy. But maybe you feel conflicted, and that's what I'm picking up on here. But I think the ultimate thing is that you can look for as many answers as you want, but you're only going to find the answers within you, because sometimes they don't present out in, they don't, we don't have answers for why people do things, especially when they harm you. Like if they're hurtful or shitty or they bully you. Like I went through that when I was in grad school. Like I had students that were really, like, I was like, this is ridiculous. We're adults, and they were treating it like it was high school. And then did not trust them much at all, but they never had to account for that. And it was just like, okay, well, and not that they needed to either, because that's the trick too with this energy, is that like you can get into a place where you want people to have to, and like it took a lot of transmuting work to take a step back from that and to understand that like people make their own decisions all the time, and people will behave in ways that are, that negate your person often, but that has everything to do with them. And the extent that it has something to do with you is your choice. You get to decide that. You get to decide whether it holds you back. You get to decide whether it does all of those things. Can the energy be really tough? Yeah, like absolutely. But sometimes you don't have all the answers, and that's okay, right? You don't have all the answers. And I think that it can be a blessing too, because I think that's where your expansion comes in. That's where Jupiter comes in, because when you don't have all the answers, it means that you don't know something for sure, and it opens up the possibility of your thriving in conditions that may not have been very amenable to it in the first place, right? Like I think about that with, a tumultuous childhood. Like I didn't have all the answers about it, and because of that, I could make more confident decisions about my worth later. You can still do this, but it's just like you're not always going to get the picture perfect ending to something. And sometimes all that you have is the Ace of Cups that you can take from a situation. And those are the lessons. That's your heart space. That's you filling your heart. That's you filling your cup, right? And I think this is kind of Jupiter showing up in a very healing sense and expanding on that for you. Yeah. So there's the Seven of Swords clarified by the Lovers, the Four of Pentacles, the Hierophant. Do you want both? Oh, the Star and the Hanged Man. More healing energy here for sure. I think that there's a way that you, so remember how I said, holding back on things with this energy here, like boundaries, right? I think there was a way that you might have been, hanging on to expressing your needs and what was really important to you, right? And I've been there. This is, I'm speaking from a place of having to go through that when I was in my 20s, right? This energy here is like hanging on to and clinging to something, because if you say it out loud, Mercury in communication, right? If you say it out loud in your relationships, then it means that someone may not honor it. Then it means that someone may treat you poorly. Then it means that someone may not listen, which places you into a bit of a vulnerable position, right? It places you into a bit of a vulnerable position. Because then what that comes down to is it means that somebody can just ignore your needs. They can ignore you. They can be shitty people, right? They can choose, they can shitty people. No one's really inherently bad. They can make decisions that don't stand up to or stand for the light that's in them, right? Let's not judge people. I'm going to call myself in on that one. But they can make decisions that don't honor anybody, right? Other than their own fear. And so I think that that's a vulnerable making place. That's a vulnerable making place, but it's so crucial to any kind of commitment that you want to make, right? It's crucial to that. It's been one of the confusing parts about friendships and even relationships for me, because I just don't, like, people can be very like smoke and mirrors about what they want. And it can throw you into this place of like, okay, well, and it's not about like, oh, I talked to this person, so it means that this is what that means. It's like, how are we communicating directly, right? How are we communicating directly to facilitate an understanding, Mercury here, an understanding of what we want in the long term, of how we're laying a foundation for something that could be committed. Because if we don't do that, and if we don't stand in that very clear place, right, it's going to be impossible to find any kind of healing, and it's going to throw us into, this could be some Neptune retrograde. Neptune retrograde. It could be something to do with that. Yeah, there, like, this is, it's just very elusive energy. Like, it's hard to hang on to. And when it comes to the matter of relationships, my lovelies, you deserve clarity. You deserve clear. You deserve a space where you can articulate your emotions and yourself and you as clearly as somebody else expresses themselves, right? So it's really about honoring the even exchange of things. And I think this may have to do, because this is the kind of to embrace, it's like embracing your worth. This tends to be like the kind of miser of the deck, so like holding on to things really tightly. But I think that this is more of a call to release, right? And it's saying this is what's standing in the way of you being in not in a committed relationship, but feeling secure in that, feeling balanced in that. Because there's Mercury here, so like connection and commitment, right? And I think this is your choice. Like, all relationships present us with healing choices or choices to heal. That's kind of what they're here for, to do for us, and like the ones that are really in service to your growth, and like the long-term committed ones where you can be curious about someone for years and find so much, not just stability and support, but like you can find so much life in the other person, right? Because again, there's stuff that you won't know. Like, you can know a lot about your partner, and you can know a lot about them, but I feel like there's ways that people surprise us all the time. And it's like, have you considered the delightful surprises that people can bring when you have that fearless articulation of what you want, right? I know what I want in relationships, and it's not a huge list. That's the thing too. It's like, when you make this laundry list of traits, is that an articulation of what you want? Because when I was younger, I was like, in my 20s, I was like, I'm manifesting a person of my dreams in my early 20s. Ask me about my divorce for real. No, but like, it's like an unfair dynamic, right? Because then whatever relationship you get into, you bring this laundry list of traits, and you're like, okay, but how do I want the relationship to feel? And it's like, you have to throw some of the traits out the window to an extent, because and I'm not talking about traits like, like, some of it is so funny and superficial to me now, because it's just like, you want a relationship that feels good, that allows you to experience a sense of stability and peace with someone who has done the work not on themselves, but kind of like, they've done the work to understand themselves, so that they can show up equally saying, hey, this works for me, or hey, this doesn't. And you don't have to worry about, in the back of your mind, like, is this person saying what they mean and meaning what they say, right? Yeah. So I feel like I think that for you, Cancer, this is a lot, but like, I think it's to embrace your sense of self. And that it's like, I feel like when you're outside of that sense of self, when you're kind of outside of yourself in that energy, it makes it difficult to commit, not because you don't know what you want, but because you're just kind of going with the flow, and you can't really go with the flow in the same way. If you're looking for something committed, you can't really, it's not quite like skipping stones, right? You have to understand what it is that you want, so that you can move forward on it in a healed and healing way. But I think you also have to take a bit of a big picture look here as well. I think it's about surrendering the notion that you're right, that you're not important in relationships, or like, you know what I mean? I don't know. There's something about that here with the Seven of Swords. Like, your needs aren't important. Six of Wands, Judgment. This is kind of like giving up old ideas of success and maybe what successful relationships looked like, right? coming up on ideas of what that looked like. Yeah. Or at least transforming it for yourself so that you have a shot at joy, so that you have a shot at happiness. And like, not a shot at happiness meaning like, oh, well, it's going to be, let's roll the dice, because I think that we get more say than we might think, right? Especially with the wheel involved. But I think there's sort of a transformation of what you think success is or looks like in relationship, because with this energy here, it can be really tough to, it tells me that there's something that's being shifted or changed, right? High Priestess, Knight of Cups, Emperor. Wow. So this is the Aries energy, right? It's transforming your sense of self, and I think you're showing up the Emperor. Like the transformation takes place. There's this transformation taking place inside of you or around you as a result of things that are going on internally, and I think it just opens up this beautiful, intuitive connection to your heart center, where you tap into this sensitivity and awareness of yourself, but it also then translates into the real world, right? It translates into the real world. So where you had to kind of like dip out of this situation, whatever this one was, this Knight of Swords situation, where that kind of put you in this Five of Cups position where you were like, like it just, like it's not, like it's like, oh, okay, well, that was nice. Like it's not something that was like a Three of Swords, but a Five of Cups is being more like just disappointment. And then I think that it's like speaking to the way that the transformation is really taking place at the level of your intuition. But again, with the High Priestess here, there's an awareness of this, and your heart space is kind of alighting again. It's alighting again because you're unapologetic about what you need, right? This is really about needs. I want to say boundaries because that's one thing, but I feel like boundaries can be so, I feel like it's such a buzzword now in a way that it's like people say boundaries are like, this is how you're going to treat me and this is what that's going to mean. But I think that equally so, boundaries are about how we treat ourselves. Boundaries are also very connected to needs and the articulation of them and expectations, but they also have to be communicated, right? We have to communicate boundaries. We can't just expect people to know, because that's just as unhealthy as coming bowling in and like making our needs the only thing that matters, right? Because in relationships, there are people, multiple, well, I want to say there are two people, but it's really not the case. Like if you're polyamorous, it's multiple people, right? So it's like, it's about multiplicities of needs coming together and interacting. Which seems very basic, but when it's in practice, it can get really tough, because what's compromise, right? What is compromise? And are you with someone who's healthy enough to recognize when that's like out of sync or out of step, right? But again, this is where something like relationship check-ins every month can be really helpful, because it creates an intentionality in the relationship that relies on something other than occasional bad feelings. Like it really sets the foundation for like, okay, I really want this to work because I like you this much. And, I love you like that, however, wherever you are in your relationship, right? But it's like, you're recognizing that there's something that has a long haul potential. So you want to set the intention. And I think that's where boundaries really thrive, is in that intentionality, is in that place of understanding that communication good communication doesn't just happen. It's not like, oh, I'm so lucky that this, no, you have to work on it. You've got to put the work in. It's like 3-3 on the time. Like you have to put the work in. And it's not hard work, because it's with someone that you care about and that you love and that loves you back. And it's like that makes it easier, right? Because you're kind of creating a world with someone. You're kind of creating a world with someone. So, oh my gosh, Cancer, this is like a big reading. I don't know where all this is coming from, but we'll roll with it. So 7 of Wands on the wheel and the 5 of Wands clarified by the 6 of Pentacles. Okay, things are they're wanting to fly out here. So on this, I'm getting that there has been that kind of, the light gets in when you kind of prioritize standing up for yourself, right? standing up for yourself. Seven of Wands can also be kind of an advocacy card, where you're standing up for other people. There's the Ace of Cups. I knew it was hanging out somewhere in here. It's where you're standing up for yourself as opposed to being at like the whims of all of the noise, right? But this can also be standing up for other people too. So keep that in mind, that this could be something that activates that and puts that in motion for you. Because like if you're going to fight for other people on their behalf for different things, then you also have to, like, why not do that for yourself and fight for yourself in the same way with the same, passion and certainty, or at least awareness of what you want. And that's, I think that standing up for yourself is really what brings in this beautiful balance, right? Beautiful, beautiful balance. And I think it's a balanced giving. It's an even exchange. And then here's that foundation, right? This is like, it's very clear cut, this whole reading, Cancer. Like the light gets in through this process of articulating your boundaries. And I think part of it is let the feminine lead the way. Like let this ease and surrender lead the way, and understanding that you don't have to control the outcome. Like that's the other side of this Emperor, is like when we're not in our boundaries, when we're not articulating our needs, we can feel like we have to control outcomes because we don't trust that it will just happen on its own. We don't trust that it's coming. We don't trust that it's going to feel okay, or that it's going to feel good, or that it will be safe, or that it will honor us. So we it's almost like we pick situations that replicate the wound until we heal it, right? Until we heal it. Yeah. So it's like, I think that that's where this Emperor can show up in a different way. And that's why perhaps letting the feminine lead the way, just that ease, that surrender, that flow. And then this is what closes out the reading, is this long-term investment and love. Like this can be relationship love for sure, given the context of what we've talked about. This can also be like things to do with work and your job, right? How are you standing up for what you need? And not in a way that's like, kicking down doors and being like, this is what I need, and like being very defensive and upset in meetings or things like that, but saying, hey, you know what? This doesn't really work for me for it to be set up like this, because I know that I thrive under these conditions. Always, it's not about one of my pet peeves in meetings is when people bring more problems than potential solutions to a table, and that myself included, 3636 on the time. So it's like if I bring a problem to anybody at work, I would like to also have at least one or two potential solutions, so that I am not just bringing an energy of problem, right? Because that can turn into just a need to spew negative energy. And if you haven't really done the work, that can also be, if you haven't really done the work, not broadly speaking, but just with the specific topic, that can be indicative that there needs to be some transmuting taking place, because the energy of the problem needs to be, in proper proportion, Six of Pentacles, to the solution. So like if you're more invested in the solution, that energy has to be reflected in how you talk about the issues. That energy has to be reflected in your commitment to dealing with different things in people, right? You have to have that. It has to be either in balance. Like you can't have the problem being so much bigger and the solution being this big. Not because we don't have to find solutions that like wipe everything out all at once. It's not like that. It's about the emotion that's behind it, right? So I think that can apply to work too, right? This whole thing. And I think that this is really a sign of like a deepening of your investment to self. Like that's the cup that was in here, right? Like this cup that you held on to, that's your Ace of Cups. And I feel like the universe is bringing you another one to meet you in that space of honoring what was in yours in a way that does resonate with this sort of 10 of Pentacle energy of long-term investment, investing in something bigger than you too, right? Like that's something that's definitely committed relationship energy, because you start to invest in it in a way that is honoring where you are and what you want, right? What you want, because you're surrounding yourself with people that listen to that, who consider that when they make choices, right? Like, so Cancer, are you considering yourself as much as you're considering other people? And that's what I feel like we're surrendering. The surrender is like this, surrendering the need to hide yourself away, maybe. Surrendering the need to, I think it's surrendering the need to do things the way you've always done them because it might feel comfortable, right? I've said it before, but starting this channel was very uncomfortable for me, but I still did it. And I think that there's something to be said for leaning into that, specifically because the Ten of Pentacles and Ace of Pentacles are here to say, like, there's a lot of internal processes that are taking place, and you've made a long-term investment in yourself. Are you aware of the fact that life is lining up to bring you partners, career, situations, contracts, work that does the same, that honors you similarly and honors you as much as you've honored you by doing this work on yourself, right? Because the Ten of Cups is, or Ten of Cups, the Ten of Pentacles is like a process-oriented. I was going to say processual, which is a word as well, but process-oriented, right? Like it's not something that happened overnight. So yeah, Spirit, what messages do you have for my Cancerians? We're surrendering this full moon in Sagittarius. Please give me some messages in their highest and best good, please. There's just this lightness. There's a lot of lightness. You have more options than you realize. Yeah, I think that's a bit of a hopeful message too. And as I was pulling this out, I saw a flower being tossed, not like hard, but just blown gently in the wind in a field, like a wildflower. Things are not as they appear. I'll read the back to you because that can sound kind of like, woo. Things are not as they appear. This is a good kind of illusion, though. The lower the price of your love, the higher its value. Brain freeze, the universe. So I think this is really about like, the lower the price of your love, the higher its value, where it's kind of like making sure that you are, making sure that you recognize that you don't have to have like, it's kind of a conundrum in relationships where the higher the price of something doesn't necessarily mean the more value it carries. And if you've been in toxic relationships or you've been, if you've been in situations that just didn't feel the greatest, that can kind of be how you see things, right? And that's where that's like the hierophant of things, like the way of doing things that you've done them before. But I think you're being called to step out of that and understand that like sometimes the smallest, there shouldn't be price tags like that. It's like a whole different kind of value system in healthy relationships and healthy friendships and connections, right? So just understanding that that's the case. Now I'm going to pull from the Miracles Now deck here by Gabrielle Bernstein. Spirit, what messages do you have for my Cancerians, please? For this Sagittarius full moon. Resplendent Surrender. I allow people to witness their behavior so I can help them move beyond it. Yeah. And this is really, this is also a surrender too, right? Like you don't have to change people. You can just say, what you need. And the folks who are committed to sticking around will see that as you can reflect back to people in positive ways too, right? And that's like a release from codependent crap behaviors where you're kind of in this place of in a place of feeling like you have to do everything for people, right? That's like it's not great, because that too can become a huge problem, right? I mean, codependency in general is not necessarily, it's not healthy, but it's that idea that you have to change the behavior instead of just allowing someone to witness it, just to let them see it. Because if they decide to do something with it, great. But if not, that's your kind of answer, right? That's your answer. And it may not feel great, but that's an answer. So, Spirit, what messages do you have for Cancerians, please, for this Sagittarius full moon? Resplendent Surrender. I choose to reinterpret my fears with a more loving perspective. Yeah. That's it, Cancer. You've got some big stuff happening this month. Lots of big stuff. Good stuff, though, right? Good stuff. So that is your full moon in Sagittarius reading. And so I hope that this resonated. If it did, please give it a like and subscribe. I'd love to have you on the channel. But if you're joining from my channel because you are subscribed, thank you so much. I'm very grateful that you're here and for your eyes and your time. So thank you. Now, if you have other videos you want to check out, please feel free to do that on the channel. But if this is where we leave it, Cancerians, I hope that wherever this finds you on the time-space continuum, morning, afternoon, or night, I hope that it finds you very, very well. Take care, my friends.